So this one is like, I don't want to say the first part, but this talk is about how to learn like any language. And in Budapest, I will give you a talk about mindset in language learning. And I think that maybe for Claudia who is here or for many of you, it would be very interesting because uh, because on one side, when we learn a language, is about how we can improve our language learning. And on the other side is also our mindset, because sometimes I think that some of you might agree, and I experiment it myself as well. Sometimes we are in some way our own enemy when we don't want to study, or we cannot find the time, or we are not always motivated. So it's not our fault, but it's also very nice to work on our mindset, because then we would be very happy to study and very much more energized. Yeah, I would just want to say that it is more like practical. The other one is much more about the mind. Someone of you is going to come to Budapest? Yeah, okay, nice. Okay, let's start. I'm doing, okay. So, today's topic is how you can learn any language without struggling. And I think it's our dream, but in real life, we will struggle at one moment or another. And I think the aim is to understand why we are struggling at the very moment of our life, and to yeah to give us ourselves space in order to go in the direction we really want. Okay, so for sure, I don't know how many of you are expert in language learning, how many of you have just started to learn the language, but I can tell you that even when people have learned many languages, there is always a point where they struggle with one particular language, or with a particular aspect of a language. So for me, the important message I would like to give to anyone who's here and who will watch this presentation is that what is very important is not only the first part is that I really believe that anyone can learn any language. I don't know whether it happened to you. People say, you speak 2, 3 languages, speak 4 languages, speak more than 4 languages, you're a genius. I don't personally believe in that. Of course, if you don't do anything else in your life, maybe it's, I really think it's about passion and about method and mind. And very often, this is what I've been seeing in the past years, is that we often feel guilty. I'm not learning enough. I'm not learning well enough. I can remember words, and I'm not very good, I don't know, at grammar. I'm not very good at vocabulary or at speaking. Everyone has, we all have our own like little things that we would like to solve. But my point is that in most cases, it's also because sometimes we are using resources that have beyond them more the idea of a business than the idea of sharing, teaching, and helping. Because when we dedicate, our time is limited during the day, and if we dedicate our time using a resource that doesn't serve our goal, I'm not saying it's bad in general, but maybe if our aim is speaking and we dedicate our time, I don't know, only to an activity that doesn't help speaking, then of course we cannot see the results we want. But there are also, in general, apps that are very good at like making you want to study more, but those apps sometimes do not give you like the right things so that you can really see the progress in your language learning. And this is where I think that sometimes there is some frustration. Okay. So as I told you, like I think there are several things we struggle with, or we have struggled with, or we will struggle with. This is life. This is normal. Doesn't matter what we learn. if we want to grow, there will always be a moment where we struggle. Doesn't matter what we do, could also be something else in our life, our business life. And I really think that the truth is that with the right method and tips, will be much, much easier. And the right method is not like one method. So one person who says you can only learn like this. We are all different. And the very nice thing about language learning is that there are several principles that work for everyone. And then you can adjust it to your own goal and preferences. So, um, I also wanted to say that the most important thing in language learning is to understand why. I think we have already seen many videos about it, but I cannot not mention it because the reason why we learn the language is what really motivates us on those days when we do not want to study, where we feel too tired. So the important part, sometimes I tell my students, write down like a list of reasons and try to go deeper. And sometimes we do it in a session, but try to understand why you really want that. And sometimes the reason that seems obvious is not the reason. There is something beneath that. And I'm saying that because on those moments when we do not want to study or we do not want to do something, because actually this principle applies to anything important we want to do in our life, then the nice thing is that if you read at least, you might remember why you wanted to do it, and then you feel at least slightly more motivated to do it because you know that it's not just okay, study 10 more words. It's really about what we want to achieve with that. And normally it's not only fluency. Maybe we want to feel more confident. Maybe in some cases we want to feel more accepted in also by ourselves. In some cases we want to make friends, have a better job. So there are in inner reasons are normally more important. So what we really feel that we need. Okay, so I will almost skip my story, not because I always have the impression that I have to put it because otherwise people can say, but who is this person talking? At the same time, I really don't like saying, I did that and that and that. I can just tell you that I studied many languages, that I teach many of them, and I'm a language coach, and I love helping people. When I'm at a party and people say I'm struggling, I don't even say, yeah, I'm next. I say, yeah, but, and I try to motivate people. And yeah, so this is like my summary. And I studied didactics and simultaneous interpreting and international communication. Okay. As I said, I really love helping people, and this is a picture of a workshop where I taught languages at the same time, a workshop in Bratislava some years ago. And it was fun. People were talking to each other and like practicing those languages and speaking them from the first moment. Okay, so let's really go to those secrets. Let's say I call them secrets, not because they're really secrets, because sometimes we forget things. And I think the most important part sometimes is not to listen to something completely new, it's to listen to something that is inspirational and helps us to go in the direction we want. And I hope that at least for some of you will be the case. Okay. So the first thing people struggle with is the thing I don't have time. And I think as adults, no one has a lot of time. I think it's a matter of fact, either because of families or because of jobs or because of so many things. It's impossible to have like 2, 3, 4 hours to dedicate to a language, maybe for a period of our life for under special circumstances. So I want to say you are not alone. It's not that, I don't know, even people learn many languages. I I think I never studied for 5 hours every day, only when I had an exam. So the most important part, honestly, and I'm saying that also to myself, because sometimes I need to remind myself as well, like that, is that the most important part is to. So even if we had the most boring book, but useful but boring book, even if you studied with something that is not super exciting, not super whatever, if you study every day, at some point you will necessarily know much more than before. But the key is consistency, because Because when we don't study every day, what happens is, number one, we might feel guilty. Like, no, I didn't study yesterday. Tomorrow we study the double. Then the next day we don't study, and then we feel even worse. And then at a certain point, when we feel too bad, we only stop because we don't want to feel pain. We ignore. So this is why it's very important to be consistent. And if later you have questions about what you can do during those 5 to 15 minutes, I would be happy to answer that. But the important part is to be consistent. And I tell my students on those days, you say, okay, really, nothing, the day went all wrong. Like maybe my student couldn't study in the morning, couldn't study during the lunch break, couldn't study on the way home. And I say, okay, just 1 minute before going to sleep. That's okay because it's not to break the chain. It's like to feel committed and to feel that anyway, even 1 minute, because 1 minute in 1 year is still 365 minutes. It's not very much, but it's much, much more than zero. So it's much better 1 minute when we don't feel good. Okay. And the second thing that I think is very important, many people say, yeah, I can read, but I cannot speak. I can understand a little, but I cannot speak. I think for most people, and of course we are all different, but for most people, the main aim is to speak. And why that? Maybe because of a job, because of friends, because of a partner. Normally, unless you are a scientist, a researcher, normally, or if you only have to read documents because of your field and everything, for example, in English or in another language, then of course you might only need to read something. But in most cases, we also need to speak it, or for most people, is also fun. And the thing is that very often, when I ask people, okay, so your dreams is be able to speak this language. How often do you speak it? To be honest, the answer is almost always never. And I'm not saying that because it's bad, because it happened to me also in the past when I wasn't really concentrating on my language learning. And of course, I can, in the end, I can feel rusty if I never speak a certain language, or I can forget vocabulary. And the nice thing about speaking is that it's one of the most active way to revise everything you know in the language. So even if it's not your aim, by speaking or by writing, you are obliged to use your vocabulary, your grammar, to be fast in at thinking. So it's really good. And I know it's the most scary one. I understand that. But the important part is think what your goal is and go in that direction. So if your goal is not speaking, you can do whatever you like according to your goal, final goal. If your goal is speaking, please introduce it into your routine. There are many people who think that no, because I don't want to speak until my level is high or at least at intermediate level. With me, people speak from day one, and even a language that I've never seen before. And of course, not everyone has to do that. Maybe you're an introvert, you don't want to do that. But you don't need to wait for 2 years if your aim is speaking. If your aim is not speaking, no problem. But how frustrating or how demotivating is it to have it the aim speaking and thinking, no, we'll only speak it after 2 or 3 years of studying. So this is why just concentrate on the things that make you improve whatever your goal is. Number three, something that I hear very often. Many people say, no, you should only focus on one language. No, don't touch the other languages. You will only disperse your energy. On one hand, I agree. I mean, if you don't know other foreign languages, and yes, apart from, so you don't know any other language apart from your mother tongue, and you suddenly want to learn 15 languages, of course, I would slightly agree, because at the very least, you have to understand how to learn a foreign language so that you can make it efficient, learn it efficiently. But the thing is that very often people want to learn a language because maybe because of a partner or because of a job or because of another reason, and then they are really loved with the sound of a language, or they have their best friend, they only have one friend on that country, but they really want to know that language. So what I always say is that if we only oblige us to do something that we don't necessarily want or enjoy, then of course there is no point in waiting, because in order to know a language, maybe at a fluency level, everyone is different. But I would say that the very minimum, unless you do nothing else, would be from 6 months to 5 years, depending on the person, depending on how you study, your goal, your initial level. So it's a long time. 6 months, not really, but 6 months must be relatively very intense. And so this is why, if I have a dream and I think, yes, I will allow myself to study, I don't know, Greek. I like Greek very much. To study Greek only when my level in the other languages is already C2, then of course, maybe by the time I reach the level, if I do, then I will not even want to learn that language again, or I will not again to learn the language. So my thing is, do what you love, because even if you dedicate 5 minutes or 10 to the language you really want to learn, and maybe a 10 to the language you need to learn, you will still feel more motivated. And then there are techniques or language combinations that make your language learning process faster anyway if you learn more than one language. Of course, I always say, if you have an exam and you need it for your citizenship, or if you need it for your studies, of course, concentrate on that language, because you have a very important goal in your life, and then you can do whatever you want. Okay. The thing is that many people say that learning is boring. Some people love it. And for example, I love learning languages, but I find it very boring if learning languages just means, in my case, taking a book, studying, and never applying what I learned. So for me, it's very boring. The worst thing can happen, because I enjoy learning grammar, but for me, the reason why I learn language is to connect with people. So if I could never apply it. So the important thing is to do what you love. We don't always give ourselves permission to do that. But if you, of course, think of your final goal, as I told you before, if your aim is speaking, don't wait too long until you start doing it, even if for 15 minutes or something like that. But do what you love, because when we do what we love, we enjoy it more, and we are more motivated. Otherwise, when we don't do what we love, we get bored, and then we stop learning. So, which is really what we do not want to achieve. So it's much better to do what you have fun with. Maybe it will take longer, let's say, but you will still keep learning. But again, keeping in mind really that if you only click on an app, it will take much longer. So do something that you enjoy, even if it's watching series. Okay, watching series can be great to revise vocabulary, to see words in context, so many things. But normally, and then we will go to another point, is I will tell you maybe this one. Okay. Anyway, the important part is also to focus on the right thing. So it's a bit like keeping in mind your goal, but at the same time, when you learn whatever resource you want to choose, or resources, the important part is to focus on the right things, because sometimes the books are not the best. Maybe if we want to learn a language, a rare language, maybe the book is not the best. So we cannot choose. When I started with Greek, I struggled very much to find a book that I think, yes, I want to study it every day, really. And it's still hard now, in the sense that there is not a perfect book, but still, the important part is that maybe to keep some parts in a book, or in a resource, within a resource that you don't find useful, or you don't find very good. So you don't have to know everything. So this is also a bit difficult when I say that, because what I'm saying is don't skip everything you don't like. The important part, try to recognize what you might be using while speaking that language or using that language. For example, we all need past tense. We all need future tense if it exists in that language. We all need a certain type of vocabulary, but not a list of 50 fruits. Maybe start with instead of learning, because very often for beginners you have a list of colors, a list of types of fruits, a list of activities. But I mean, I don't know you, but I cannot remember 50 words just like this. So in my opinion, so what I do personally, I think, okay, what is the aim while I'm learning this language? Let's say that what I want to do is to talk to people. Then I will learn maybe two fruits that I like very much. I want to order in a restaurant, or I want to tell my friends I love everything with the raspberry, in my case, for example. But it's I don't need to know everything, or I need to know what I'm allergic to. If I'm going to the country, I need to know how to say it. But my suggestion is to have a practical approach to language learning, so that you can learn other. For example, when the higher you go, learning language is a bit like through layers. So at the beginning, try to learn what is really useful for you and for your goal, so that you keep being motivated. And the more you know, the more you understand the language, what happens is that you can go deeper and go back even to a book, a one or two book, but then learn all the words that you didn't learn because they were not relevant to you at the time. So my suggestion is really make it more like tailored to your goal and to what you need. Okay. So create a routine and stick to it. Of course, it seems very easy when I say it. Of course, we all know that it's a bit difficult. The thing is why I said at the beginning, study from 5 to 15 minutes every day. It's because a routine means that we do something almost every day. And with languages, especially the beginning with a language, is very, very important, because if we study for 2 days and then don't use our resource for 1 week, we will have forgotten most of what we learn, because memory works alone. Short-term memory works like within a span of maximum 7 to 2 hours. So it's better to revise it or to see it again. So a better 24, 48, 72. But the important part is to be consistent, and to in order when you're consistent, you start creating your routine. And when at the beginning, well, we feel very motivated. It's, yes, from today onwards, I'm going to study so much. I'm going to be so good. But normally, on those days when we don't feel like studying, what keeps us studying is, for example, what I do. I don't have something super fancy. Maybe I cross the days I'm studying a certain language, or I use an app for tracking the days I studied a certain language. For me, it's motivating, because then, especially when I can see it, I say, okay, I studied for 10 days. Really? Do I want to give up on day 11? So visual aids are very important, at least for some people, because so when we are in our head and then thinking, no, but I'm too tired. So, no, but I'm angry. So, then we are telling ourselves stories. They are true, but they are true in that moment. Then on the next day, we will feel worse. And if we see something that motivates us, the list of goals, the motivations, the why, or how many days we have already studied, then it's already motivating. And okay, so if you have more questions about that, I will be happy to answer them later. And then it is more about mindset. Many people say all sorts of things. I'm not good at languages. I'm too old. I've never been, I don't know, I cannot be disciplined. So many things, so many things. But the most important part is to be kind. Because first of all, we are doing something that most people aren't doing. So even if you learn for 1 minute every day, have you ever met people? I have, and in some cases with even me, myself, when I say, yeah, I wish I knew this language. I mean, in case you're studying it, you're already doing much more than most people do. So you can tap on yourself on the shoulder, say, very good, you are being very good. Because in most cases, we don't treat ourselves right. I read once somewhere, it was super nice, that if, for most people, maybe you don't, it's not your case, and I'm happy for you if it's not. But in most cases, we treat ourselves in a way that if other people on the street would treat ourselves the way we treat ourselves, we wouldn't be our friend, you know, or we wouldn't be their friends. So this is why it's very important to understand that we are as worth as a very good friend of yours, because you are your best friend. You just don't behave all the time like this. And I'm saying that also to me. I'm not just saying to you. So the important thing is to be open, to think that you are in a learning phase, and to think that it's just a phase you have to go through, and it will not always be that difficult. The more you learn, the easier it gets. So don't worry about that. And again, if you this is a topic that now I like very much, because I understood that it's a very important topic. So if you have questions, or if later you're interested in the topic of mindset, some of the things you can reach out. Okay. And then something that I also done in the past. Sometimes we think, okay, I'm at level 0 or level 1, and I want to reach level, let's say 10. And I imagine that there is so much in front of me that it will take me ages. It's not even worth starting. So a nice quote I read when I was very young, it was, if you think that your destination is far away, get started and think about it while you walk. And I like that, and sometimes I forget about it, but it's very important, because it's the sum of what you do every day that really will decide the direction of your destiny, of your language learning, of your life. And this is why the important thing is just to go one step after the other, and yeah, and be happy about the progress in for so it can be very small, but if you go further, you're progressing, you're making progress. And so don't look at the mountain in front of you, concentrate on those small steps that will take you closer to what you want to achieve, no matter what. So if you go forward, no way you will never go far. One day you might be feel frustrated, but it's only a normal process in language learning. And set reachable goals, because sometimes I have people who come to me and they say, yeah, from tomorrow I want to study 4 hours a day, and maybe 1 in 100 people will actually do it. Maybe they are super motivated, they have something they really need to achieve in 1 month or something, but do something achievable. I said it at the beginning, because it's the only way, it's the best way to create a habit and make sure to stick to it. And then this is also related somehow to mindset. We all hate making mistakes. Most of us are perfectionists, and no one wants to make mistakes, because especially when we start learning a language as a adult, then the thing is that we are so used to be able to express whatever we want to say, that when we are not able to express what we want to say, we switch language, or we prefer to avoid that situation because we don't feel comfortable. I think, okay, I'm speaking all day that language. I feel confident. Maybe it took me years to feel confident, and then I have to try to speak in a language, and I feel stupid. It's possible. It's totally normal. And two things. Actually, here I could talk for hours, but some of the things I wanted to tell you is, especially for learning a language, to connect with people, or to integrate, to get integrated in a new country, or with your partner, or with, so for social reasons. What I always say, and I like it, I believe in that. I think that if you were at a party, and someone didn't want to talk to you just because you are making some mistake, I don't want to be their friend, you know? It's like, I want to be, if it's for social reasons, you want someone who is understandable, who is nice towards you, who is interested in getting to know you. So I must say that I'm not talking about the case where you only know 2 words and you want to blind someone. You yourself, you don't care about this person. So if you see a person and this person seems so nice to you, you want to become friends. Yeah. try to talk, even if your language skills are not very good or very bad, because in most cases people can read what people are thinking. I mean, verbal communication is only 30-40%, and the rest is the attitude, what the person is kind of transmitting to the other person. Okay, so this is why it's much more important the intention. If you want to talk to this person, so only to use this person just because you can trade, then I understand that this person, after three words and 5 minutes of silence, maybe they are not interested. But if you are genuinely interested, I'm sure that it will work out. And then I wanted to tell you to um, in order to become fluent, it's not something that you have from that happens from one day to another. Fluency is something that comes with time, but it doesn't have to be like a long time. But the important part is that when you, for example, when you do a grammar exercise, you are focusing on accuracy, because you are making sure that this verb is correct. You are making sure that what you are doing is correct. And when you are speaking, unless you take so many pauses, it's impossible. Even if you don't know the language very well, you make mistakes while speaking a language that is not your mother tongue. It's a matter of fact. The faster you want to speak it, the more natural you want to speak it, the more emotions you put into your speaking, the worse you will speak. This is completely normal. So the important part is to distinguish between accuracy and fluency. So don't train both of them at the same time. If you want to train accuracy, no, everything has to be perfect. While speaking, of course, you will say one word every 2 minutes, maybe. So try to, when you are on your own or when you are with a teacher, up to you, you might work on accuracy. But if you want to get fluent, go with the flow, try. And the other day, I gave a talk about linguistic mistakes. And I had some very funny ones in my in my language learning path. And mistakes are not something awful. They help you memorize things much faster. Because if I say something that is completely, for example, an example, when I didn't know German, I used to say, I went to Germany and I went to a course. On the second day, on the first day, I heard people saying "tschüss," and it sounded like ciao in Italian. In Italian, you say ciao when you say hello, when you say goodbye. So many years ago, I thought, must be like ciao. And in the morning at 7 o'clock in the next day, I was feeling so proud of myself that I was looking at meeting people from the course and say cheese. And they were looking at me as if I was crazy. And I never made that mistake again because I understood from their faces that something was wrong. And I like this mistake because I learned something and I never made that mistake again. And I have a funny story to tell. So nothing wrong about mistake. Really, try to be friend of your with your mistakes. They can be very nice anecdotes you can share with friends and family. And yeah, um, and again, I could talk a lot about it. And number 10, many people ask me how they can learn multiple languages at the same time. And of course, it depends on the language, but the most important parts are you could study them separately. So my method is not to study the same sentence in 3 different languages. First, because I found it boring. So, but if you don't, you're free to try that. The second, especially because maybe the beginning it's fun, but when you already know hundreds of sentences, then I don't find it fun anymore. But the main reason is because the language is not only grammar, it's also culture. So if you I don't know, in Germany or in the UK, you can talk about the weather. In Italy, if you talk about the weather, the person who you are talking to will think, okay, this person doesn't have anything to tell me at all, maybe doesn't want to talk to me or something. So it's not a topic we use for social exchange. So this is why I don't normally learn the same sentences, and also because like languages like Japanese, you cannot translate it word per word. So it would be very difficult to learn the same sentence. And so I normally learn languages separately. I have a book, or because I like books, but I also have other resources. I'm looking in my books there. And I study them separately, but then I compare them when I see that I'm mixing them up, or when I see that the grammar is very similar, or when I see that there are when I want to make sure, yeah, when I want either to accelerate my language learning, or when I want to make sure not to mix them up. Because if I see the same word in 2, 3 languages, if I'm learning 2, 3 languages of the same family, I can notice the patterns. And once I notice the patterns, then I will not mix them up, because you will understand that that a certain language normally does not end in a certain way, that normally, for example, coração in Portuguese, its ending in Spanish will be corazón. So you will see how things change in a way. And so it was also, the second part is to focus on differences. So if a word is very similar, like pensar in Spanish, pensar in Italian, or penser in French, there is no need. I'm trying to learn this word, flashcard, flashcard. I mean, it's almost the same. Once you learn, you understand how it changes. You don't need to think too much. Concentrate on those words that are completely different and they are very frequent. You use them very frequently. Like, for example, anche in Italian also, and in Spanish también. They have nothing to do with each other, but in Portuguese it's também. So at least you see that there are culturally you need to learn 3 different words, but this is a word that is different in many languages. So it's a very important and common word. So focus more on differences, because then in the end you might think, okay, I don't remember the word in French, but since I don't remember it, most probably it's because it's similar. And then you will try to use the best guess of how this word would be in French if you remember it in Italian or Spanish, for example. And number 3, super, super important, is to switch between languages. Because and again, I'm not saying one sentence, sentence. I'm saying that because our aim depends on what occasions you want to be able to use all these languages. But if it's for work, you cannot tell your customers you hang up and then you take another call. You don't want to say, sorry, I've just spoken Chinese. I cannot to talk to you in Japanese. Of course, we don't want to do that. So the important part, if you need to switch languages, that you train that, because after a couple of weeks that you do it in a consistent way, then you will not mix them up very much. Of course, you still have to practice, because you still need to learn those languages and practice speaking those languages. But if you use them while speaking, it's really what will keep the languages separate in your brain. So let me look at the time. So I don't think I have so much more time. So I think it is it. So I just want to say I wrote a book about how to become fluent in multiple languages. I have it in both Italian and English. And of course, in the book, I cannot give like detailed explanations about Japanese, how to learn Japanese and another language, because otherwise the book should be like 1,000 pages to cover most languages. But for sure, it's a motivating and inspirational book, and it's very impressive. And okay, and now I think you might want to ask a question or not. But if you want to keep in touch, if you want to write an email to me, if you want to visit my website or my YouTube channels, we are very welcome. And I'm here for you now if you have any questions.